What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
All right, I think we are all set for another highly anticipated episode of Underground Sports Philadelphia. What is going on, everybody? It is a World Series preview edition of Underground Sports Philadelphia, episode number 476. It's KB and Matt coming at you from Underground Studios. The Philadelphia Phillies are playing in the 2022 World Series. We're going to dive into all of that. And Howie Roseman doesn't like teams stealing the Eagles' shine, so he went out and made a trade this afternoon. We'll talk all about Robert Quinn. We'll talk about Eagles Steelers. We also have Eagles enemies coming out later this week with friend of the network, Wesley Euler, that you won't want to miss. And then, of course, we'll dive into Survivor, the Union, the Sixers, the Flyers. Who would have thunk? Everything is coming up Philly. But before we get started, make sure you guys are following us on the socials, Twitter and Instagram, at UndergroundPHI. We are 16 followers away on Twitter from the big 3K. When we get there, we got a big-time giveaway with our friend Josh Reynolds coming down the pipeline, and you're not going to want to miss out on that giveaway. So make sure you follow us at UndergroundPHI on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Check out the website, undergroundsportsphiladelphia.com, for all of our written content. Subscribe to the podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. It helps the show continue to grow, reach a new audience. And, you know, we're talking about the fight-ins. Who doesn't want more Phillies content in your podcast feeds? So go subscribe on Apple and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews on Apple. Let us know how excited you are about this Phillies World Series opportunity. And subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. You get full video episodes of every Underground Sports Philadelphia podcast. We're on that road to 1K subscriber gauntlet challenge. We're 258 subscribers now. Once we get to 1K, all of our shows will be doing something different to celebrate and commemorate a big-time milestone that will help our network continue to grow. So go subscribe to the YouTube channel, smash that like button, ring the bell icon, comment down below your excitement for the World Series. And big thank you to our sponsors who make this show happen: Main Auto LLC, Security 21 Security Systems, Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated, the Dental Wellness Center of Vineland, and our boys over at Pickup. Guys, go to playpickup.com. Start playing the hottest headlines in sports. Play those World Series props. NFL is here. NBA is here. NHL is here. They got everything you can think of when it comes to sports props. It's free to play. All you got to do is sign up with your phone number at playpickup.com. You rack up points on your fan profiles. Cash them in for prizes. That's playpickup.com. Matt, how we doing, man?
You know, I think it's truly one of the few times that I've said living the dream, and I feel like kind of living in a dream.
We are living the dream. The Phillies are headed to the World Series for the first time since 2009. They take down the San Diego Padres. We get 3 iconic calls on one of the more memorable moments in Philly sports history with Bryce Harper's essential game-winning home run. And we get the Astros in a rematch of 1980, which was the Phillies' first World Series win. I did see somebody put out that MLB should let both teams wear their throwback uniforms, which would be kind of cool. But it's Phillies-Astros in the World Series, and it still doesn't feel real.
No. No, it doesn't. I think because so much of the postseason for the Phillies has been a little bit of house money, that obviously the stakes have been there. Like, we were, I think, all feeling it during the Padres series especially, but it hasn't felt like it's different when you're the favorite and you're in these situations as opposed to the underdog, and that'll be how the Phillies enter this World Series too. But yeah, it doesn't feel real because, a quarter into the season, this team was listless. And even when they were kind of getting their act together, it still felt like this team was maybe, another like free agency period away and, another year like development for some of the younger guys away before they were actually competitive. We were just, honestly, I think we were just happy with making the playoffs, making that like a regular part of this team again and, going on to next season. But yeah, now you're having this experience. And now too, it shifts from where you're like, you beat the Braves and you're like, damn, this is great. But now it turns into this thing. It's like you don't really know when you'll be back in this spot again.
Mm-hmm.
There's no guarantee that the Phillies are back, even in the playoffs next season. Like that's not a given. So now you have this opportunity. You're 4 wins away from winning a World Series, which is just a huge chance. I mean, like it's just I don't know. Like I think you could have said a lot of things at the beginning of the season about where this team would ended up. I really think saying that they were gonna be in the world, like definitively making that decision, I think would have been a very bold call. And even at the start of the postseason, there's 12 teams that I don't think it would have been totally unreasonable for people to say that like a spot 11 or 12 was the Phillies, and that was kind of the consensus too. Like they were, and they were really the last team to punch their ticket to the playoffs, ironically, against the Astros, which was also the last time the Astros lost a game. So. Maybe not ideal, but it is what it is.
I've been doing some number digging and seeing some things on MLB Network. I think the biggest one that stands out to me, obviously the Astros have now been to 4 out of the last 6 World Series, have only won 1 of them, but they are not a good home team in the World Series. They've played 12 home games, Matt, in these World Series, including when they made it in 2005. So those are their 4 appearances in the World Series, not including 2022, obviously. But can you tell me how many home games the Astros have won in their 4 World Series appearances in 2005, 2017, 2019, and 2021?
I'm going to guess they have won 6.
I'm going to tell you to cut that number in half.
Wow.
They've lost 9 out of 12 at home, mostly because 2005 they got swept by the White Sox completely in the World Series, lost that 4-0. And then when that stolen franchise got their luckiest World Series win of all time, that was the year that the road team won each game. So the Nationals won 4 games in Houston. Houston won 3 games in D.C., and the Astros went 0-4 at home in 2019. I mean, it's kind of a track record, if you will. Like, there's enough of a sample size there to say, hey, maybe they're just not getting it done in the World Series at home.
And you know what else? Justin Verlander, 0-5 in the World Series. Like I think it was like a 5.7 ERA. So, he's an older arm. I'll say that, like, right off the bat, the Astros are a great team.
Yes.
Like they are. And I mean, that's not new information. Like I can remember us talking in, like, not that we're the only people noticing the Astros, but I feel like we were talking in like July and August when we were looking to the playoffs, but it kind of fucking feels like an Astros, because like no one really, I do think largely speaking, no one, at least from my perspective, was really like, it was a lot of the Dodgers discussion, right? A lot of Mets discussion, Yankees, like those are the teams kind of dominating that. But really, the Astros the entire time were just humming along. I think it's also like people do get kind of numb to the success. The Astros again have been in the World Series a lot lately. They have been in the playoffs a lot over the last decade. Like people have just become kind of like used to that. They've become just part of the background, I think. But yeah, I mean, it can't be lost. Like they've swept every series. They've looked dominant. I will say, the Mariners challenged them.
Yes.
They certainly, obviously they sweep that series, but I don't think that was,
They could have easily lost that series.
Right. I don't know that there was a little bit more of it to a knife edge there than I think maybe we give the credit to. The Yankees, I would say, largely were outclassed.
Yeah.
But they also have just owned the Yankees, over the last like 5 or 6 years. So every part of me wants the Phillies to win, obviously, but it is like, and it's very obvious. Like, this is the toughest opponent yet.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. I mean, like, obviously, the Braves were a very good team. And that's I think what gives me hope in this is, like, the Phillies beat the Braves, I would say, convincingly.
Pretty easily.
I mean, especially those 2 games at home, frankly, I don't think we're
Outclassed them.
Yes. Like, the 2 games in Atlanta were definitely close affairs.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's still, like, the Phillies haven't faced elimination yet in these playoffs either. Like, as much as you want to say that they're the underdog and all this, because they are, they came in with such low expectations, they've performed like a number 1 overall team. Like, they've blown away teams, at points in these playoffs.
Especially at home.
Especially at home. Home has really, really been where they've been spectacular. And, you just have to put your faith that they can make that. I mean, it's the playoffs, and we've seen the Astros over the last few seasons struggle with NL East teams. Maybe there's some like dark magic there. I don't know, but it's certainly like a juggernaut of a team that you're facing, because there's not even just like one way that this team beats you. They have elite pitching. We know that. They have 4 very high quality starters, and you're gonna have to figure out a way. But this Phillies team has figured out a lot of different ways to get to this point. So it's hard for me to say they can't do this.
And that's really what has propelled the Astros in their 2 series this postseason, is their pitching. You look at the quote-unquote face of the franchise, Jose Altuve is 3 for 32 this postseason at the plate. It's really been 2 guys, I would say, who have really carried them offensively. It's Yordan Alvarez and Pena, who is a rookie. Oddly enough, both teams have rookie shortstops starting in this World Series. But other than that, like, it hasn't been your typical Astros who have, guy after guy after guy beating you with the long ball. They're doing a lot of small ball stuff and driving in runs, and then if the opportunity arises for Pena, for Alvarez, and sometimes Alex Bregman, they're the guys that will, hit the ball out of the ballpark. But I think that's also another thing the Phillies have done really well throughout this postseason. For the most part, they've kept the ball in the ballpark, and if, somebody is hitting a home run, it's just it's a solo shot.
Yeah. I think there are 2 things working against the Phillies here. One is that, yes, they face like high quality pitching, like especially again in that Braves series, and I think you saw that most clearly in those first 2 games in Atlanta. Like, when the bullpen came in, like, the Phillies really struggled with that. You're gonna have that exact same situation again with Houston, and you're gonna have to do a lot of work to chew through those. And the longer series go, typically that favors pitching, and the Astros clearly have the plus matchup in that regard. Not that the Phillies are, incompetent. They've really, especially the bullpen has souped up a lot in these playoffs and performed at a really high level. But I would again say the Astros are certainly better in that regard. And 2, I will say, like, one thing that I do feel like especially the first game at home in the Padres series, did feel like the Phillies felt the moment. It did feel like the players felt the nerves a little bit, which they hadn't up until that point. And I wonder if maybe they got that out of their system in that series. But also, I mean, it's just, we talked about it coming in the playoffs. This team has 0 playoff experience.
Yeah, as a team, there's guys who have been to the playoffs, who have been to the World Series, but as a team, this is their first go round together.
And there's a significant part of this lineup that this is their first postseason.
Yeah. And even Ranger Suarez said it after his start against the Braves, he felt the nerves, and he's not typically a guy who has that happen to him, and then he goes out against San Diego in 2 instances and looked like one of the best pitchers in baseball. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild what this team has been able to do and how they've been able to do it. I love that Rhys Hoskins is just throwing as many middle fingers to the doubters, and it's rare, I think, when you look at the postseason a lot, especially I'd say probably over the last decade or so, it's usually the unlikely heroes, the unlikely candidate to come up and be the guy that's carrying the team. The Phillies have gotten production from their big bats game in and game out, and that's so rare in the postseason to have your superstars locked in for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but the Phillies have had their superstars locked in at the plate and defensively for the most part throughout this entire postseason run.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce has been at an
Otherworldly.
I mean, it's really like an all-time like postseason run that he's on. And Zach Wheeler, you know, like if you're not even just talking hitting, like has been again all-time just like postseason run to this moment. Schwarber has really picked it up. Reese, we talked about, you know, if you get like a hot Reese like week and a half, 2 weeks in the playoffs, that could be what wins you a World Series. And if he plays like he did in that Padres series, at least offensively, like yeah, that's the kind of Reese that you need if you're gonna win this series. Like obviously, like Bryce is kind of the fulcrum, I think, a lot for this offense. But if guys like Reese are playing like that again, and like they did against San Diego, like that's a big moment. Even guys like Stott have been big. Gene has had some big moments. Like it feels like everyone to this point has had some like huge moment that they've had, and I can think of a lot of times where this team has kind of turned around by actually like the late batting order. You know, like Brandon Marsh coming in and hitting a big home run or an extra base. Like we've had Matt Vierling has had moments. Like everyone has kind of had their moment in the sun a little bit, and I think that's a strength that the Phillies have too, is that there's really no easy spot on the Phillies. There just isn't, and I think you're seeing the Phillies like in their most ideal form. That's what you've seen them in this postseason, and this is why, not to pat myself on the back, but I could believe, like I remember saying in the beginning of the year that I could believe this team would win a World Series more than I could see them make the playoffs because of the way that they're built. Like they're built like a team that if they just like catch the right wave, like they can do what we've seen them do, which is, you know, blow teams away and, you know, just sort of, if they can shore up, like just give them like average to above average, you know, bullpen pitching, like, yeah, this team can win a lot of games, can beat a lot of good teams. So the Astros would be favored, but again, the Phillies have not gotten hit here easily, and against, teams that certainly weren't good. You know, like that Cardinals series, that was a tough series. Went on the road and won too. You know, like that Braves series, like that's a team that, largely speaking, got the better of the Phillies all season and has over the last few seasons. And Phillies went and handled that series. They, again, have not faced elimination so far in these playoffs. And I think the big key, too, is that the Phillies have stolen a game on the road in each of these playoff series so far that they've been in. So that's obviously going to be probably the most important thing out of any, like, and that it seems so obvious, but I mean, really, like, if you can take one game off of Houston, while you're in Texas, like that's, I think, such a massive psychological too. Mm-hmm. Like I know that the Astros are a very good team, but I can't imagine that they're like, we've all heard the NL East stuff and that, it's been the Braves and the Nationals to them and all that. Like, I'm sorry, but I have to imagine if you drop like, especially like game one at home to this Phillies team, and there's no way that isn't in the back of your mind. There just isn't. I refuse to believe it. And, but again, it's certainly a buzzsaw that they're walking into.
And I have to say this: the last time Aaron Nola was on the mound in Houston, he went 6 2/3, perfect game, which led the Phillies on their way to clinching this postseason spot. And I saw a little statistic because everybody's always going to talk about the Astros cheating scandal. It's a thing that is etched in baseball history forever. But when the suspensions and everything were handed down, it was the winter of 2019. Going into 2020, pandemic happens, no fans in the stands to kind of give the Astros some shit throughout their season. And since that happened, the Astros still have not been to 9 stadiums. Philadelphia is one of them.
And we are certainly going to remind them. I think that's, you talk again about advantage in this series. Like, I don't want to say the Astros don't have a good home crowd, because I think if you're in the playoffs as regular as they are, like, of course they do. But I do think there's something to it. And I think it's been reflected a lot when people talk about like the ticket prices, right? That it's like a grand to be like, standing room only in Philadelphia, whereas it's like, I don't know, like $300 or something.
It's cheaper to buy 2 tickets in Houston for game 1 get on a plane, fly to Houston, and fly back than it is to buy a standing room ticket in Philly for Game 3.
Right. I do think there's something too to like that energy, and we've seen it in these playoffs. We see like the Phillies have been good in the playoffs. They've been great at home in the playoffs. Like
Unbeaten at home.
And I mean, not just unbeaten, like they have beaten teams at home, and I think it's hard to not say that the fans aren't a part of that. It's hard to not say that the atmosphere that has been built there, which I think has also been a reason, not only just because I think a lot of people hate the Astros, like nationally, but I think also a lot of people have attached themselves to the Phillies because, like, let's face it too, like it's not often that Philadelphia teams are this, but they are like, they're the underdog, and I think they're likable, like they're largely speaking, and I think they have some guys that people are willing to like root for, and it's fun, they're kind of everyone's like favorite team because why, like it's a good story. It's a team that people will certainly remember over a decade ago, like being very dominant, but have been out in the wilderness a bit, and you have like these big stars, and they make these big plays, and all the games are exciting, and the fans are going crazy for every play and living and dying with it. So I think nationally people have really attached themselves to the Phillies, which is cool because largely speaking, the Philly like sports teams are not.
It's usually us against everyone.
They're typically not like the lovable, like media kind of darling. And that's us now though.
Yeah, I mean, like I tweeted the video of Dancing on My Own from the clubhouse, and Mike Rabel, the CEO and co-founder of the Premier Lacrosse League, who I'm very good friends with now from covering the league, he tweeted at me, "Is it okay that I like baseball or that I like this team / really like this song? Either way, I'm jumping on board." Like, this Phillies team is bridging the baseball lacrosse worlds together, and
which is, I mean, talk about northern southern divide.
That is like the meme of the guys holding up the bandanas together.
Yeah.
And then today, Jamie Apodi tweeted I think it's Bet Online AG, like the states that everyone is rooting for the Astros or the Phillies. And it's 44 states are rooting for the Phillies, 6 for the Astros. And I said it's not the first time a team from Philadelphia outnumbered a team from Texas 44-6.
Very nice.
I mean, like it's hard not to like this team. They're just an all-time like vibes team. Like the locker room videos, you just see like how they act with each other. When somebody like does something really well during a game, when they're in the clubhouse. I mean, Bryce Harper's home run too. It comes out. Kevin Long gets interviewed. I forget which outlet, but Bryce tells Kevin Long before he goes up to bat, "Let's give him something to remember." That's like Ryan Howard, get me to the plate type shit.
What's crazy about that series too, because we haven't really gotten a chance, I think, to like reflect on the Padres series, but it's almost funny how Rob Thompson like outmanaged in that series, and like I think there was a lot of question marks. What was that, Game 3?
Yeah,
which kind of left Sir Anthony in for
2 innings to close it out,
and I think there were some question marks about that because Game 4 was already going to be like a bullpen game, and I think it really showed in that game. I think the Phillies are going to have to show it again in this series. Like when you see the opportunity to take a 2-1 series lead when you still have 2 games at home, you do it because you. And I think that the Padres on the other side of that coin, where you had Josh Hader ready to go against Bryce Harper, and it for whatever reason that didn't happen.
He's warming up in San Diego's bullpen right now,
and I think that's something that, like you can't. It's so cliche, but you can't like leave anything unturned. You can't. You have to leave it all out there because you'll just like, if I was a Padres fan, I'd be reflecting on that all winter. Now good for San Diego because their winters are amazing. But it's still like 74 degrees or whatever. But that would be like something that and the Phillies put themselves in a position where like if they lost, it wasn't gonna be for lack of being aggressive, and I don't think it was stupidly aggressive either. And it's easy to say in hindsight that it wasn't, right? Because it worked out, of course. But I think the Phillies showed a lot in that series too, like that they're willing to like push the chips in and like take, and again, like so often I think teams get into trouble, not even just in baseball, in sports in general, when you take the foot off the gas pedal. Like you have to be willing to constantly just kill teams. We see it in like football a lot. Like it's like you're not running the ball with like in the third quarter with a 10-point lead. Like put put your foot on the throat, finish the game strong. And I think the Phillies did that in that Padres series in a really impressive way. And that's just like a total shift from where this team has been the last few seasons under different management, where, I can recount, not off the top of my head, but I can remember so many occasions where, even in the regular season, where the stakes are obviously a little different, but, where I was saving guys for this. And it's like, well, like, why have them? Why have these relief pitchers then if you're not going to use them in like big situations, in games that you really need? And I was just, that Padres series is amazing. It reminded me so much of like why playoff baseball is sick.
Yes.
And why it's just the absolute best, because
especially game 4.
Because you just live and die with everything. Like, it's just every inning is just like an anxious mess, and it's just this like apprehension about everything, and every moment. There really isn't any other sport that I think like has the drama that every pitch, every at bat that baseball has, where like I don't know how, but it's like, you're spending like 3.5, 4 hours like watching these games, and like the entire time you're glued to it, and I think that's what I love about playoff baseball, and that like just the drama, the tension of it all, I think it's really, I think it's unmatched in like North American sports. I don't know that there's really a good like comp for it.
Well, you'll love this. Nick Castellanos was on some radio station today, I think in Chicago, and they asked him what the environment is like in Philadelphia. He said the only thing he can compare it to is a Premier League soccer game.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's loud, it's hot, it's
breaking Ken Rosenthal's phone.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at it. If you look at like the highlights of games, right? Like, and you just see the difference between the bodies in like European, especially like England, like football, they'll call it like limbs. When you just see like people's arms just kind of going, and that you see that all the time with the Phillies. Whenever there's a big play, whenever there's a home run, like, and not that other fans aren't like, we're so much more passionate there,
right.
but it, again, I think so much of it has to do with the fact that there's been this drought, and people like. There's still, though, been enough time, like from 1980 to 2007, 8 onwards, there wasn't like as much carryover. Like most people that experienced 1980 were much older at that point.
Yes.
There was a lot of separation between those years, like the real like good old days, and then even like the early 90s, like that separation was different. That team obviously didn't win a World Series like 2008 did, so you're seeing like people like our age that were like teenagers for the last World Series, and then people like. There's so much more like collective memory and like joy like associated with that, and you add in the fact too that was also the first Philadelphia championship since '83. Like, there was, I think, just a lot of buy-in during that period, and now you're getting those people back and more. And I think that's why like I just think the environment is what it is. It's not a. It's like just like a perfect storm of so many different things. There's not just one reason. It's not, just Phillies fans are so much more passionate than everyone else. Like, yeah, like I would say like over most sports markets, Philly fans are, but I do think it's also like you've had this drought, and you've had this this kind of history now with this team of doing like amazing things in the playoffs, and people remember that. It's still in their like memory. There's still a 2008 Phillies account. Like it's just. It all tied in together.
Yeah, and before we continue previewing the World Series, make sure you guys check out our new merch partners, PHI Apparel Co., the best in the game. They are the official merch providers of Underground Sports Philadelphia and all of our podcasts. We're going to have podcast-exclusive merch on their site very, very soon. But Underground Sports Philadelphia is brought to you by PHI Apparel Company, who provide unique designs and high-quality clothing for the great fans of Philly. With their original designs for all, there's no doubt you'll stand out in the crowd. They got the Bryce Harper reaction to Kyle Schwarber's tank shot in San Diego on a shirt. I just cooked up a Bedlam at the Bank, Thrilla in Manila poster shirt that we're going to have up. And you guys can use the code UNDERGROUND for 10% off any apparel when you shop online at phiapparel.co. That's phiapparel.co, and use code UNDERGROUND for 10% off. That's for anything on the site. Get ready for postseason baseball, postseason Union soccer. Get ready for more Eagles football. Flyers off to a hot start. Great Sixers merch as well. So shout out to our new merch partners. But, did you see the photo of Shane Victorino in the crowd during Bryce Harper's home run?
I did not see that. But
So Victorino is like noticeable from one vantage point when Harper hits his home run. And he's got a hoodie on. And
is this like the scene in, like, I forget which Mighty Ducks movie where the coach like comes back, he's kind of watching from the stands, and
somebody said Shane Victorino looks like a Force ghost passing down Philadelphia Phillies postseason legacy from one generation to the next.
I mean, it's true. It's crazy to say, but just by virtue of winning the pennant, like, this team is already like one of the best Phillies teams ever, which is an insane thing to say because, where we were just even like 2 months ago, where we were with this team.
Where we were October for 25 days ago, we were pulling our hair out because Nick Maton was on the mound pitching against the Nationals in game 1 of a doubleheader that the Phillies lost 13-4.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was my Phillies is a disgrace tweet was that day. How wrong was Meek Mill?
Man. It is wild, too, because this is the first time the Phillies have gotten into the postseason as a wild card in franchise history, and now they win the pennant. So instead of having one of the white division winner flags that says 2022 on it, that's not going to be there. But there's going to be a blue one for winning the NL pennant out in Ashburn Alley, flying on the flagpole.
Which is, it kind of defies belief. I don't know.
Unreal.
It is crazy to think that we're at this point, and I mean, I didn't think that we would be previewing a World Series necessarily, but here we are, and this is why too. I think it's so important to just make the playoffs because so much of it was like, just get me there, just get me, and anything can happen. And obviously, this is on the lower end of the bell curve in terms of like probability, but still, like once you get there, anything can happen. Anything can happen.
This run started on a 6-run rally in the top of the 9th inning in St. Louis.
And if that rally doesn't happen,
who knows where
probably get swept in that too.
Yeah.
It's just so much of it can change. And I think what's interesting too is like, I think if you're thinking about this in like a more like just like fan and like narrative sense, the Phillies of like the 08 to 12 era are much more similar, like have a lot more in common with the Astros than they do with this iteration of the Phillies, right? Like in that, especially once you get to like those 11, 12 teams, like just very dominant, especially regular season, like go into the playoffs knowing where their like destination truly should be, where they're at least aspiring to get to. And yet the Phillies during those years lost to teams that had these kind of, let's just go like, they had these like spiritual things about them. They had these kind of like just outside like the chalk lines types of narratives going for them, and sometimes that just happens, especially in baseball. And maybe this postseason has in some ways been about like exercising a few demons, especially like that Cardinal series, even the Braves, even though like we don't have any like postseason history against them, like just being able to like, which by the way, we haven't really, because we have so much like left and there's still so much. I don't know that I'm ever going to let a Braves fan live down that we absolutely smoked them in a playoff series. Like that's
ever.
That's
ever.
As much as the Phillies have failed during my lifetime, they never did that to me. So
2-0 against the Braves in postseason series, I'm pretty sure, as a franchise. Other time was 93.
Right. Yeah, and I think now you have this opportunity to I mean, really like immortalize yourself. Already this team is going to like live in people's memories a lot, and there's been like those iconic moments, but I mean, if you win a championship, you're like, just think of the way that we canonize the 08 team, right? And people now, we're still not that far removed, but still like, I mean, 5 years removed from the Eagles Super Bowl. Like, like every part of that gets like remembered and like put down in the annals of history in some kind of way. Like, if the Phillies don't win in 08, like no one's talking about like stairs, home run.
He's not throwing out the first pitch.
Right. Like, it's just like you have this opportunity now to like truly cement yourself. Like, already this team is going to be remembered, and you already have the banner and the pennant, all that. That's fantastic. And I think shouldn't lose sight that even if the series doesn't pan out the way we wanted to, it's not going to feel that way, because now you've gotten to this point, and it's like, it's like when the team in March Madness, this Cinderella gets to Sweet 16, they lose. It's like, they would have taken that in an instant at the start, but in the moment, it feels horrible. But I think with like reflection, if the series doesn't go well, it's a huge success. Like, it just is. Like for the Astros, this is the expectation, is to be making the World Series. For the Phillies, this is like, wow. Like, and I think it can really go a long way to really like solidifying this like iteration of this team and like the next 2 or 3 years and kind of success they can have.
100%. And I think, just seeing who has come back during this postseason run too, from that 07 to 11 and even beyond, that run, to come watch this team. And we're going to predict who's going to throw out these three ceremonial first pitches for games 3, 4, and 5, because there's going to be a game 5. It's brought to you by our friends at Kenwood Beer. You guys go to kenwoodbeer.com, use that all new and improved Kenny tracker to see who's got Kenwood Beer on tap for the World Series and all year round. That's kenwoodbeer.com. You got to be 21 or older to do so, and of course, please drink responsibly. So, Matt, we've had a number of fan favorites come back to throw out ceremonial first pitches so far this postseason. It started with Shane Victorino, and then Pat Burrell against the Braves, and then against the Padres we had Matt Stairs, we had Ryan Howard, and we had Red Hulk Jason Worth come through. Ben Revere was in town sitting up with Charlie Manuel as well throughout this postseason run. A lot of the current Phillies said it feels like that run of Phillies who have come back, they're like living vicariously through this team. I personally feel like there's going to be 3 games at Citizens Bank Park. Who do you think is going to be tasked with the ceremonial first pitches for these 3 games?
What's Cole Hamels up to?
That's what I said. I think Cole Hamels needs to throw out Game 3, because Game 3 is happening on Monday.
Yeah.
Halloween, anniversary of the parade from 08, and Cole Hamels was the World Series MVP.
Yeah.
I think it makes the most sense for Cole Hamels to throw out the first pitch, especially over, the last 2 or 3 seasons where everyone's like, oh, bring Cole Hamels back home. Like, it'll get the people going, and I think Carlos Ruiz needs to catch that as well.
Yeah, show Blanton up to. Let's just bring back some of the dogs. Where's Brad Lidge?
Yeah.
Even like someone like Victorino, I think would be like a true like.
I think Jimmy Rollins has got to be one of them.
Jimmy Rollins would be fantastic,
especially now that he's off the TBS broadcast for the ALCS. He'll be around.
Bring Schmidt down, maybe. Get him involved. Maybe Kruk even.
That'd be great.
Who said, by the way, he was tweeting that he wanted to retire as a Philly.
Yeah, I saw that
today.
I watched an interview with him today, because it's very rare you see Kruk go on like podcasts and stuff, but he was on Part of My Take, so I had to see what Kruk was about. He talked about his retirement story, and literally like was in a room when he was with the White Sox with like Ozzie Guillen, Robin Ventura, Jim Abbott, like legends with the in baseball, and he said he was at a point where his knees were just like kind of going on him, and he's like, if Jim Abbott got traded, he was going to retire.
Right.
He ends up getting traded, and he said, you know what you should do? If you get a base hit, you should just walk off the field and say that's it. So that's what Sean Kruk's plan was. And he continues to go like 0 for 0 for 0 for, and they're playing in Baltimore. And John Kruk is from West Virginia, so he has his family come out and everything. And he tells his parents the plan, and his dad says, well, you better get that hit in game 1, because I'm not sitting in this fucking heat this whole weekend. So get it done.
You love to see it.
And then he gets a bloop hit over Cal Ripken Jr. and doesn't get the opportunity to walk off the field, so he's running around the bases and everything. And then he goes into the clubhouse, and Ozzie Guillen has a bottle of champagne to pop for him. And then he is nowhere to be found afterwards. And his agent calls him, who was on vacation, and says, are you injured? What's going on? He's like, oh, I've been meaning to tell you, I'm retired. And he's like, you didn't think to run that by me? He's like, you weren't going to change my mind. Just incredible from John Kruk. Somebody said Roy Halladay's wife to throw out one of the first pitches. But I don't know if, because it's the World Series, I don't know if they're going to keep it to guys from 80 and 08, to do it. I think what would really get the people going is if somebody put a search warrant out for Cliff Lee and got Cliff Lee to
get an APB out on him.
to come on out and throw out a first pitch. I know they've been doing the rounds with some of the guys who have played for the Phillies in the past and have Houston Astros connections as well. Brad Lidge and Hunter Pence have been on MLB Network the last couple of days. Hunter Pence is playing it right down the middle. He said, I feel lucky that both teams are playing.
Smart man.
Brad Lidge said that he is pulling for the Phillies to win because the Phillies invited him back to retire as a Philly when he did decide to retire. So that's pretty cool. And then apparently our very first banging the fist on the table free agent, Matt, Jake Arrieta, he's picking the Phillies in 7, and he's going to be at Game 1 in Houston and Game 3 in Philly.
Don't know if I like that or not. So, not ideal. Not ideal, but it makes me a little nervous. I'm looking right now, just previews and stuff, and seeing people pick the Phillies. I'm like, come on, just pick the Astros.
And it is so different, for this series too, just pitching matchup wise. Aaron Nola's getting the start in Game 1 rather than Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, I do think that's a little interesting.
I kind of like it.
Okay. So I don't know that there's a perfect choice here either way, because Wheeler has not struggled, but you've noticed it when he's gotten that
third go round.
Right. When he hits 70 pitches, there is certainly a drop in performance where he goes from I don't know, one of the best postseason pitchers of all time apparently to just a very good pitcher. But I mean, even a team we've seen him kind of give it up a little bit in those moments, and against a team like the Astros that can be compounded. So giving him that extra day rest might help. But you're only now going to have him available for pretty much maximum 2 games in this series, which is, if it goes 7, you still have you could get Nola on short rest, but still that's maybe prefer Wheeler in that spot. I don't know. It's tough, but I don't think there's a perfect answer for it. And Nola's going to go on regular rest and then 4 days rest. So there's no perfect choice here. I think it's fine. I think really ultimately this is probably the better choice because at least one of them is getting that extra day's rest. And I think we all would love the idea of Wheeler potentially having a Game 7. But if you talk about being aggressive, which I just commended Rob Thompson for doing, and I think this is probably the more aggressive thing, knowing I don't know, you're kind of giving yourself truly the best chance of winning one of these games in Houston, which I think is probably the most important thing of this series. Because I think if you come back to Philly down 2-0, that's just, it sounds obvious, but that's just a much more challenging hole to dig yourself out of. And so, yeah, you give yourself that shot to theoretically win it at home. I think that's just a much different situation.
Yeah, and you look at just the way that both of these guys have pitched, and it's really been fortunate the way that things have bounced for the Phillies. Every single series, because they've been so dominant, they're 9-2 this postseason. They've been able to line it up so they can have Nola and Wheeler go the maximum amount of starts that you would want in each particular series, which has been fantastic. And if that's dream scenario for a wild card team that I don't think anybody predicted would be able to happen. And you look at Game 3, Ranger Suarez looked like a completely different pitcher. against the Padres than he did against the Braves, which is a positive sign there. And then you figure out what game 4 is going to be. Is it going to be a bullpen game? Is it going to be, let's actually put Noah Syndergaard out there for a hope of like 5 innings? So that'll be an interesting one, especially at home against this Astros team. And then, oddly enough, Matt, the 2 travel days for the World Series fall on Eagles game days.
And it's similar. I do like this, Omen. We started off this postseason with a, F the Cardinals weekend, and it's going to be an F Houston.
It's a Houston hate week.
Which is, you know what? That's potentially the vibes you're looking for, So we'll see.
And, you're telling me, especially if the Phillies are coming off winning one of those games in Houston, Sunday is not going to be just a ridiculous atmosphere at the Link for the Eagles and just like the precursor of what's to come Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at Citizens Bank Park.
Yeah. I think, man, I'm just imagining like that. I'm a little worried about the health and safety of people. If things go the right way. But yeah, I'm just like still kind of like awestruck that we're in the World Series.
It's insane.
That's the biggest takeaway for me.
And then everybody out in the streets, on Sunday when the Phillies win, and Jordan Mailata out in the streets celebrating. And today during his press conference, he said every Phillies game he's been to, they've lost, so he's not going to another Phillies game ever again. He's one of us.
Fair enough. I respect that.
We love the dedication. I mean, you said it in March. You believe that this team had a better chance to win a World Series than to make it to the postseason, and now they're 4 wins away, Topper. They're 4 wins away. Also found out today, shout out to UK Phillies, he tweeted the video. Callum Scott was a Britain's Got Talent competitor. And the song he used was Dancing on My Own back in 2015.
Oh, man. It's a little too much for me. It's all making a little too much sense.
He also said that he's down to come to Philly and perform at one of the World Series games.
Would love that.
And, just because not only one team is thriving right now, the Phillies going to the World Series, Howie Roseman didn't like that, the Eagles are on a bye week, can't be stealing all the shine. This afternoon, as we record this on Wednesday, he goes out, makes a trade with the Chicago Bears again, gets Robert Quinn for a 4th-round draft pick, and the Bears are paying $7.1 million of his salary. So basically, Howie Roseman traded a 4th-round pick to the Bears to acquire Robert Quinn and let the Bears pay Robert Quinn to play for the Eagles.
Unreal.
A guy just last season who had 18.5 sacks.
Yeah. And, this is, talk about being aggressive and calling a shot in a way. This is, it's an aggressive move by the Eagles. And even then, they're giving up draft capital, but I saw that the Bears are still covering a high part of the cost of the contract. So really, you're just talking about giving away some capital here on the draft side, not so much like cap space. So that's big.
Massive.
That feels like a huge acquisition, and it's the kind of like move you make when like the season has started out very well. The NFC is winnable. Like I don't want to like jinx anything, of course, but like the path for the Eagles to a Super Bowl is there. Like
Yes.
it has appeared before them, and like when you see that, you have to seize it and take that opportunity because again, similar to what I'm saying, but the Phillies, like you don't know when that's going to present itself. So yeah, when you have this advantage in this situation you find yourself in, you have to be willing to go to put some chips in the table.
Yeah, I mean, Howie put his Tomahawk shades on. You guys can go to tomahawkshades.com. Use code USP for 25% off your sunglasses, blue light glasses, watches, shirts, sweatshirts, everything in between. Go to tomahawkshades.com. Use code USP for 25% off your order from our friends at Tomahawk Shades. And I mean, you go and make that move, and apparently, a bunch of the beat writers, after this move was made, tweeting out, there's whispers around the league that the Eagles are not done. Don't know what that entails. A lot of rumors that I'm not a particular fan of, throwing Kareem Hunt's name out there. We just got rid of number 37. Can we not bring number 27 in? I saw our new friend Jalen Strong, too, mentioning DJ Moore from the Carolina Panthers.
I think Carolina wants to keep at least one
usable
one
asset.
valuable offensive player for the future.
And I also don't know how DJ Moore would truly fit into the grand scheme of the Eagles.
Carolina's only a game out in the division, so
I know. It's crazy. And it's like, DJ Moore, is he extremely talented? Yes. But, I mean, the Eagles also have 3 wide receivers that fit into their offense pretty seamlessly, and I just don't know if DJ Moore would get the targets and, the usage rate that he kind of wants and demands for the type of player he is. Somebody else said Aaron Jones.
Don't see that.
If the Eagles went and traded for Aaron Jones, I would instantly become the levitating SpongeBob meme, because that would just be like absurd. And even though the Eagles are trading a 4th-round pick for Robert Quinn, they still have 6 picks in 2023, and that's including 2 first-round picks. One is ours, and one is potentially a top 5 pick, because the Saints are absolutely terrible this year. And in 2024, they have 2 second-round picks, their own and the Saints.
Right. So, load up. Load up, brother.
Keep those eyes peeled. And not only on Sunday is it Eagles-Steelers, which I don't know how you feel about this, Matt. Myself and Wes Euler have talked about this a ton on Eagles Enemies over the years that the Eagles have played the Steelers. I feel like that should be an annual game. It doesn't feel like there is enough of a rivalry there that is right there for the taking. Like the Flyers and Penguins, that's a rivalry there. Obviously, you don't really have it with baseball because the Phillies and Pirates are in 2 different divisions, but Eagles-Steelers feels like one of those AFC-NFC rivalries that should be happening pretty much every single year.
What's interesting, too, is I think more than a lot of the teams have this, intertwined history, too. Like in the World War II years, like the teams merge and, you have this kind of... it is interesting that they don't really have any seeming, maybe people more on, the dividing line between the two, right? Once you get, kind of outside of Philadelphia, more like Western Pennsylvania, you have more of the Pittsburgh. I guess it'd be similar. Surprised it's not more similar though to how for us, right? There's a kind of dividing line between Eagles and Giants or Jets fans, right? But I guess it's also too there's not really that many notable games between the two whenever they've played. There kind of sometimes has to be that spark, that reason to be engaged, and it really hasn't been.
Yeah, I mean, and Wes brought this up on Eagles Enemies that'll drop later this week. Do you know the last time the Steelers beat the Eagles in Philadelphia, Matt?
In Philadelphia, no.
I'm going to make you hop in the time machine, go all the way back to 1965.
Wow, what a year.
That blew my mind. I was very surprised that it's been that long.
Shout out to the Civil Rights Act.
But we got Eagles-Steelers on Sunday, which will be a great game. Eagles coming off the bye. And we've got a rematch, Union NYCFC, for a chance to go to the MLS Cup.
Yeah. Talk about exercising some demons. Obviously, last season, these teams technically played. The Union did play New York City FC, but obviously the Union were COVID depleted.
It was pretty much Union 2.
Right. The Union were COVID depleted in that game, and even still almost advanced to the final. It's a different kind of shade this year in that the Union are a fantastic team and crossing every part of my body don't have a COVID outbreak to deal with as of yet. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. These teams, obviously, there is that history, and then there is some of that, I don't want to say nastiness between them, but I just do think it's there's a little bit of a rivalry there. And, the Union have played them well this season, though. They won both their matchups, so that's not totally predictive of how this game will go. And, we've seen really Union, anytime we've seen them in the playoffs of the last few seasons, it's been a lot tighter games, and it's been cagey at times, I think could be a way you describe it. And I think they'll take away a lot of what NYC likes to do. And, I think getting past Cincinnati and you passed that test, and then, obviously Andre Blake had to make some big saves there, but I do think the Union are the better team in this matchup. They're at home, which counts for a lot in the MLS, and I think they'll go through it. I mean, in the other side too, you have LA and Austin FC, and interestingly enough, too, the top seeds in each respective conference have not met in the MLS Cup Finals since 2003. Wow. So it's just not been. You have that opportunity now. I mean, really, you almost have 1 and 2 versus 1 and 2. You get some high seeds left in this bracket now, but yeah, it's shaping up to be, no matter what it is. I think it's gonna be a really fast-hitting cup final.
Yeah, and earlier this week too, announced by Philadelphia legend and Philly superfan Jay Wright, Jim Curtin named MLS Coach of the Year.
Yeah, his second time winning it. I think very deserved. I know other people have said some other guys, and fair enough. I think there can be some arguments, but I think also when you consider I think especially in season tweaks that were made to this team, for me that's just different. I know Nancy for Montreal was another guy that people really wanted to win, and I think when you consider the kind of the glow up they had this season and how improved they were, fair enough, but. I do think there's something to be said about this Union team, and that I think they evolved a little bit this year too. We've never seen them be this kind of free scoring team like they were, while still holding that just fantastic defensive record that they had. And so I think that deserves a lot of credit, and yeah, I think it's totally reasonable that he wins that award.
100%. Looking forward to that. We got a Philly doubleheader with the Eagles and Steelers going at 1. I think the Union are at 8 o'clock.
Yes, 8 o'clock.
So Sunday's going to be absolutely electric, leading into the World Series at Citizens Bank Park. And now everybody is starting to see the light, Matt, that at least I've been talking about. I think we've both talked about it on this show in years past. People want the Rob Thompson effect to come to the Sixers. They do get their first win of the season. Kate Scott with an all-time call on a James Harden three-pointer. Absolutely shakes the defender, gets him to the ground, hits the three, and Kate Scott drops a who won the trade. A lot of people starting to bang the drum, though, for Sam Cassell like we have for a couple years now.
I am... First of all, I have not watched the Sixers for more than 6 minutes.
The one clip I have seen was that James Harden.
I have, frankly, not given them my time and energy to start the season because, one, I got a lot of shit going on. But two, I mean,
we're in the World Series, baby.
They're up against the Phillies. I mean, what do you want me to do? All right, you want me to stop watching the Phillies in the NLCS?
We got two teams on historic postseason runs and an undefeated football team in this city.
And you want me to tune in to
October basketball,
to plantar fasciitis Joel Embiid? No thanks. Part of me just wants them to lose 10 straight. Just get rid of Doc. I'm willing to just take the heat. Take the heat while we got it, and take our lumps. But I mean, it's early season struggles. I don't think. I mean, you look at the losses too against obviously the Spurs loss is not ideal, but outside of that, I mean, you lost to the Celtics and Bucks.
Yeah,
that's
I also do not remember. For the life of me, and I tweeted this, I think the last time I've seen so many people care about October basketball the way they have with the Sixers losing right now is when the process Sixers went 3-0 unpredictably to start their season with Michael Carter-Williams at the forefront of this team. It's October. We have said it time and time again, and the national media has said it time and time again. The NBA really doesn't start until Christmas.
Right. It's all kind of just a warm-up to get you
nobody cares about October basketball
later in the season. But I think the one thing that's been good about this that I've noticed, again, without just admittedly not watched a ton of Sixers basketball to start the season because I'm practicing self-care, but Harden has looked good this season, and that's to start the year, which is great. And that's what we need. If the Sixers are going to be successful this season and win a championship. But yeah, I mean, part of like the Phillies magic and all this is like, you look at the Sixers team, you're like, first of all, I'm not doing it.
No.
Not even putting them on the second screen.
No.
And two, like, I just think, you need some radical change.
If they have to be the sacrificial lamb for the Phillies to win, take them. Take it.
I mean, really take the Flyers. Like,
yeah.
But, yeah.
But for 4 games, if we have to sacrifice a few wins here from the Sixers and give them to the Phillies, where do I sign?
Yeah. And just tell me how many we need to get rid of Doc Rivers, because I'll suck that up, too. I'll work it into the budget.
Flyers off to a hot start, though.
Don't care.
But doing the damn thing. So good for them.
I could not care less.
Also,
I saw the Flyers made a trade today, and I almost texted my brother.
I also think that's why Howie Roseman made a trade.
I almost texted my brother, like, hey, what's up with these? What are we thinking here? And I know that I don't think he's been super invested in the Flyers either for some pretty fair reasons. And I was like, I'm not sure I care to know.
It's like I see they win, and I'm like, good job, guys.
Good for you, I think.
Before we dive into our Survivor talk, to wrap up the show, I did see a pretty fascinating tweet. Man, I'm going to have you jump back into 2017, where a football team from Philadelphia was dubbed underdogs for their postseason run. Even though they were the 1 seed, did lose their, at the time, MVP candidate quarterback. And in round 1 of their postseason run, they defeated a bird mascot team. And in round 2, they went on to go defeat a team with a human-like mascot. And then in their championship matchup, they faced a heavy favorite who their franchise had a notorious record of cheating in their respective sport. Fast forward to 2022, this underdog Phillies team, round 1, faced a team with a bird mascot. In their next 2 series, faced teams with human-like mascots. And in their championship game, we'll be facing a heavy favorite with a track record for cheating in their respective sport.
Yeah. I mean, Altuve also, like, one of the, just by the numbers, like, I was reading about, like, the Astros and their like, playoff success. And, like, the core of that team is going to have, like, some of the best all-time postseason numbers because they've just been in the postseason every year and deep. I mean, Altuve is, like, going to be by the books, like, one of the best postseason players ever. I think he's like 21 postseason home runs.
Alex Bregman does not know his career without being in the ALCS.
Yeah, like, it's just insane. Like, if you really think about it, but I like those little narratives. I'll take it.
And on top of that, we have some math that is mathin' from a personal standpoint. Back in January of 2018, our former producer Tyler Steinbrein, before we even started this podcast, played Reasons Unknown by the Killers with the Killers in front of a sold-out Wells Fargo Center weeks before the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl. A few weeks ago, back in September, Tyler Steinbrein played Reasons Unknown on the drums with the Killers in front of a sold-out Wells Fargo Center weeks before the Phillies will be playing for a World Series. Tyler, all I got to say is keep playing Reasons Unknown with the Killers.
Yeah, whenever you have the chance.
Good things will come. But we're going to wrap up with some Survivor talk and get you guys set for the new episodes. Brought to you by our friends at Binho Board. It's the next big tabletop game for your man cave, your she shed, your tailgates, you name it. It should be there. It's like paper football meets foosball. You got Binho, and they're dropping new World Cup-inspired boards every single week leading up to the World Cup, which is right around the corner. And this Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Team USA board is finally dropping. So go to BinhoBoard.com and use code BinhoUSP for 10% off your boards, your accessories, your merch, you name it. BinhoBoard.com, code BinhoUSP for 10% off your order. Matt, another week of Survivor in the books. All right, I'm feeling real good about our guy James. He seems to be in control of Coco. 2 straight tribal councils, which had me on the edge of my seat. But going into it, I didn't feel nervous for him because it felt like he was kind of in control of tribal. And they blindside Gio after he gets the advantage from going on the journey post immunity challenge. And it seems like James has the numbers now on Coco.
Yeah, and I think too he's a strong ally in Carla, which they seem to work really well together, have a lot of trust in each other. And I like too that James, I just like the way he talks to people. I think he it's never like admonishing them or like talking down to them, but he's always trying to soothe, and I think he really gets in. And Carla's kind of the same way too, where she has, it seems like from what we've seen, she has these really good like social connections with people too, and they like Gio opens up to her immediately about his advantage, which ends up being a mistake. So I like that duo there a lot. Yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting now too, because we've in the past few seasons haven't had this like where all the tribes have sort of been trimmed down. I kind of like that, and it seems like tonight we're getting some sort of merge situation.
Question mark?
I mean, the title of the episode is Mergatory, so I mean, people listening will have a much better idea because maybe they'll have seen it by then. But yeah, I liked what I saw from James. Each week, I'm being filled with a lot of joy in picking him. Yeah, I think Ryan's decision to intentionally throw the challenge
rubbed me the wrong way.
Okay, so you can throw a challenge. I'm not totally against the idea of throwing a challenge in general. However, I think it comes with obviously tremendous risk in that you are willingly, at least it seems, like putting yourself in a chopping block because you don't ever fully know how safe you really are.
Especially a rogue challenge throw.
Right. Like, and if you're gonna do it, you gotta have a much more solid plan and like kind of have that plan really set. And he didn't. Then the lying that he was doing, like, oh, I'll just I get it, like people vote me out. Like no one has ever said that.
No
one has said that on Survivor in like 20
Tell
years.
them my name. Like, what are we doing?
No one has said that on Survivor in like 20 years. Like taking the like noble warrior approach. Like, even Coach was not doing that. Like no one has ever just like, yeah, you can vote me out. I get it. I just, whatever gets you further in the game. Like no one is saying that. No one is saying that. So, yeah, Ryan, not
great.
Did not show me a lot of promise there. I was already kind of out on him, and I don't want egg on my face, but I also don't feel very wrong in thinking that Ryan will not be winning season 43 of Survivor.
As long as he doesn't get that fucking hourglass.
Even then, like he could shake up the game, but I don't.
But it seems like whoever gets that's who ends up winning the last
true.
2 seasons.
Yeah,
so.
maybe that's the new pick.
I mean, not much from the Vesey tribe this week. They just kind of, have been smooth sailing since they've gotten down to 4 tribe members.
They all seem close.
Yeah.
Like, I'm interested to see at the merge what they do because they actually all seem to be pretty. And they've won some challenges too, which I think helps, and they've got some like food. I do think I am curious to see how they do in a merge situation.
And then the Yellow Tribe is just still trying to get Gabler out, but then they seem like the most like detached from one another. There seems to be some chaos brewing with the Yellow Tribe. I
wouldn't be totally surprised if that maybe is like the storyline for like a part of the merge, like between like Ellie and Gabler, like those two trying to like get numbers in some way. I wouldn't be too surprised if maybe that, like Sammy I think is a little bit of a wild card too. Like he's been playing I think both sides a lot in that tribe, and like it's weird though because both sides seem to trust him. Like like it's not like he's just like weaseling his way. Like he seems to have in some sense at least established some communication, some connection. So yeah, I am really curious. In both ways, I'm curious to see how Vesey and them do it in the merge for kind of different reasons.
And now we have do all 3 tribes now have their Beware advantage?
They do, and
idols.
Simple.
Yeah,
like
very
they
easy.
kind of dusted it up, so which is good. I'm I kind of hated the drawn out like purple butterflies make me dream or whatever. Like I kind of hated that stuff. I'm glad that they made it in a way that it's still a challenge, but that you know realistically you can get this done in a day and you're not losing your vote. Although the jeopardy is still there. So
yeah, Gio gets voted out. If I'm remembering correctly, those advantages like do they get gifted to a tribe member?
The ones that they get for like risking their vote and stuff.
Yeah, I forget how those ended up working.
Don't know off the top of my head what happens to them. I think they might just be gone. I think they're just out. But I'm not, because he had the knowledge is power, which is
right.
As far as although not as overpowered as it was in the last 2 seasons, because you don't have people like kind of necessarily publicly announcing that they have an idol, because once one tribe knows, like then everyone knows, all about it. Although again, you still have a lot of like one thing with like having to lose your vote is that you kind of do have to confide in an ally if you get the beware advantage, because they have to know that you don't have to have a vote. So already, you're gonna have to break that circle of secrecy with yourself. So
yeah, so we'll see how that all plays out. Make sure you guys follow at Buffs and Snuffs on Twitter, and make sure you're following at Underground PHI on Twitter and Instagram. We are 16 followers away. Matt, we did get a new member of the Phillies mom squad. Mama Stott followed the pod today, so she's down with us, just like Nick Castellanos' mom, and pretty much the entire Castellanos family, who I think it can't go unsung. Nick Castellanos has had a pretty damn good postseason.
Yeah, 100%.
So make sure you're following us there. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Subscribe to the podcast feeds on Apple, Spotify. Leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. It really helps the show continue to grow and lets us do more cool stuff for you guys as we continue to move along here towards the end of 2022 and into 2023. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel as well, where you get full video episodes of all of our podcasts on the network. We're at 258 out of 1,000 subscribers for our first milestone that we're trying to reach. So make sure you subscribe, smash that like button, ring the bell icon so you don't miss a single video that we put out. And big thank you to our sponsors who make this show happen. Main Auto LLC, Security 21 Security Systems, Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated, and the Dental Wellness Center of Vineland, as well as Tomahawk Shades, Pickup, Kenwood Beer, Bino Board, and PHI Apparel Company. All of their info, promo codes, and links are in the show notes on audio and in the description on YouTube. But this has been another episode, another Red October edition, episode number 476 of Underground Sports Philadelphia. For Matt, I'm KB. Let's go Phils, and we will catch you guys next time. But until then, we are signing off. Peace.